Hey everybody, and welcome back to 21st Talks. My name is Colin Snell. I am a junior at Cornell studying philosophy, psychology, and cognitive science, but my true passion is studying this field called effective altruism and doing communication work to people just like you about the greatest forces, ideas, and threats facing us in the 21st century and how we can build a better world both for ourselves, live more flourishing lives, but also build a better tomorrow for the collective of humanity to make sure that we can achieve a long, beautiful, glorious future ahead for our species and whoever our descendants may be. So welcome to the channel. If it's your first time stopping by, if you're a returner, hi, I hope you're doing well. So today we're going to be doing our first Monday quote, and this is where we read a piece of wisdom to help us achieve the first step there, which is living more flourishing lives in our own lives. Plato said, as a response to Glycon asking, why would you do anything not for yourself, which is in moral psychology a view called moral egoism. And Plato responds, more so the Platonic Socrates responds to Glycon's urging that no one has a reason to do anything other than act by saying, when my neighbor is doing well, I'm doing better. Not in the sense of comparison, but in the sense of when someone who is in proximity to you in the same world as you is having a better life, chances are that that's benefiting you more than it is taking away from you. Because, of course, to do well oftentimes means to be well, to be well oftentimes means to do well, and vice versa. And that is really, really critical in today's world when there's so much unnecessary suffering and so much that we can do. And that is what the field of effective altruism is really striving to achieve. As a field, effective altruism is about 2 decades old, but it's based off of a philosophy called utilitarianism that weighs the consequence of action to be the true denoter and the true mark of what good behavior is, of what a good action is, morally speaking. And utilitarians try to maximize whatever the aim that they deem good to be in the world, not just for themselves, but for people collectively or for beings collectively. And this idea utilitarianism has been applied in effective altruism and with the corresponding field of existential risk, which is what a lot of our content focuses on, of course, to now not just aim to do the most good in the world today, but also try to do the most good in terms of a long future ahead. And there are people who work on short-term risks. There are people who work on long-term risks. Long-termism is something that we'll be releasing a podcast episode and corresponding article and video set soon on. So make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification for all of that fun information be sent directly, not DM'd or emailed, but to get notifications for is what I'm trying to say. But for the time being, short-term work and long-term work under 21st Talks larger banner will count as mutually beneficial, right? If you're trying to optimize for long-term flourishing, making sure that the world today is doing decently, right? To make sure your neighbor, to flex that Platonic idea just for a second, that is the center of today's video. To make sure that our global neighbors are doing better, because the world is so interconnected now, and there frankly isn't any moral or ethical justification to ignore suffering. If it's 5,000 miles away, it shouldn't be any different than suffering that is down the road from us or that we can see visually right in front of us. That suffering isn't of any different value or reason. It doesn't give us any less of a reason to act, if you know what I mean. And that is precisely what effective altruism has been doing by focusing a lot on effective charity giving. It turns out that the best charities are substantially higher impact, ethically speaking. They're a lot more efficient at saving human lives and improving flourishing and well-being for individuals than even the good charities. The difference between a great charity or the best charities, say the top 10 charities in terms of ethical impact, and the top 1,000 are genuinely human lives. And effective altruism has given calculations and has measured and has found ways to precisely depict that set of equations in a way that allows us and equips us both as a community but also as people in other fields. It's highly interdisciplinary to genuinely do the most good. And effective altruism isn't just based off of that Platonic line or just based off of utilitarian principles. There's a litany of other literature that has been released that is trying to make sense of both the world today and how to do the most good in the world today for a future beyond. And I am very, very happy to say that existential risk and effective altruism are really, really quickly expanding, because more hands on deck may not necessarily be good in these fights. There's some worries about crowding in the field. However, what I can say is that if you're someone who is aiming to do good, and you're willing to put the effort into really, really figuring out how to do the most good, really precisely, and you care, you know that your actions matter, that is both psychologically incredibly empowering for young people especially, but for anyone alive today. It redefines what it means to live a flourishing life, which our society doesn't do a good job prescribing or of educating, hence why that Plato line is so important. But third, being engaged in this type of work generally is something that is deeply, deeply counter to the endemic fatalism of today. And I might not know if field crowding is a really major concern across all potential threats to humanity, so-called existential risks, or more specifically, existential risks made up of existential hazards. That's all stuff we'll get into in later content and have done some podcast episodes on. Check out the link in the description. But there is something that I know. We might not know if having more people in the field is necessarily always better, because there's arguments in favor of that not necessarily being the case, that it's harder to find certain talent, and some of these tasks are, and some of these potential problems, especially artificial general intelligence, are incredibly, incredibly technical, and you need decades of education sometimes to effectively, be a likely candidate for the solutions that humanity really needs. I tend to not dismiss, but refute many of those arguments about about field crowding. But even if we accept for a moment the claim that more people in the field isn't necessarily good, and that therefore public communication is, on morally sketchy grounds, even if we accept that premise just for a second, just as a thought experiment, what I can say is that it's better to have people who are not fatalistic. And if effective altruism and existential risk is for any of you, as it has been for me and so many people who I've seen grow into the field through different facilitation work I've been doing for years, and education programs, and some work I'm doing here at Cornell EA, if a similar process happens to you and you currently are feeling fatalistic, you're not going to see just sunshine and rainbows in humanity's future, but you will be able to more realistically assess the odds that we have for building a more flourishing future, both for ourselves as people who are alive at this point in the 21st century, but also in our ability to bring about a beautiful, beautiful future ahead for humanity or whoever our descendants may be. That's the long future we mentioned earlier. And we don't usually think about our ethical impact as affecting anyone outside of maybe our great-grandchildren, right? But it's not a completely novel idea in the history of humanity. Benjamin Franklin and many of the founding fathers in the US had a larger time scale of their conceptualization of doing good. They felt like they were building a foundation that future generations, not just their great-grandchildren, but beyond, would be able to build upon. There's another quote that we'll be tackling in a couple weeks. There's so many that I'm excited to get to. But as a snippet of it, to paraphrase, I'm not going to say who it's by. Comment down below if you know. But to paraphrase, a wise man knows to plant seeds for next year's harvest. An even wiser man knows to plant trees to grow into an orchard one day. That's what we are trying to do at 21st Talks. And that's why the first quote I decided to go with was Plato's response to Glycon in the Republic. That when one's neighbor is doing good, they themselves are also probably doing just a little bit better. Because we're a world now of global neighbors. And if we don't know how to work together, as is currently being shown time and time again in the news cycle, legacy news cycle, but especially with the news coming from Ukraine today, if we don't know how to work together as neighbors and as common people find value in this collective mission for good, for fighting for flourishing collectively, both within our own lives, but also in the lives of others, and especially in the lives of future generations. If we can't do that, then we're letting those future generations down. And importantly, you're also letting yourself down. So try to stand up to that call to action. Find a way to get involved. We at 21st Talks and other members of the existential risk community and effective altruist community are trying to provide opportunities to do so. So let me know down below what you think. And more importantly, I'd love to hear what you think about today's quote. And I will see you guys next Monday. Actually, I'll see you on Wednesday. But I'll see you again for the next Monday wisdom clip next Monday. And until then, please try to live wisely and try to do some good. Importantly, try to do some good. Because when you do good, you are a rational reason for people to be that less fatalistic about humanity. And that goes a long way. All right, thank you guys very much. I'll see you guys next week.